Hey guys, welcome to Black Ambassadors of Change. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, tell your friends. This week we have an episode that's going to focus on a forgotten group of Americans, and specifically Afro-Americans, that's our veterans. I know we talk about it in broad terms, but I just want to focus on the contributions that African Americans have made to this country throughout these years, and we don't really get recognized for it. So stay tuned, Black Ambassadors of Change. All right, guys. Throughout our history, African Americans have been at the forefront of fighting for this country's liberation and throughout the struggle. But somehow I think it gets lost in the shuffle. Veterans on the whole is underappreciated in this country. But I want to kind of focus today on the impact African Americans have had on our country, even though they weren't awarded the same rights and privileges as the majority population. For example, Augustus Attucks, he was the first person to die in the war against England in 1770. A lot of people don't know that. A lot of people don't know almost 9,000 African Americans fought on behalf of the revolutionaries, and up to 20,000 fought on behalf of the crown. So why did so many African Americans at that time fight on behalf of the crown and not on behalf of the revolutionaries, George Washington and the group? That's an interesting question to ponder. Let's move on to the Civil War. A lot of people know about, maybe a few blacks fighting against the South, but many don't know there were pilots, steamboat pilots, there were doctors and surgeons, there were spies. Harriet Tubman was one of the famous spies on behalf of the Union against the South. So they would go down there and they would spy and pretend to be slaves or get information from the slaves to sabotage the South. A lot of people, another famous African American during the Civil War, Abraham Augusta, he was a slave, but he wanted to be a doctor, and because the times wouldn't allow him to be, he escaped to Canada, became a doctor in Canada, and came back to the United States and fought on behalf of the Union to free slaves in the South. So contribution after contribution. Let's move on to World War I. 350,000 African Americans fought in that war, and they were awarded freedom in their own country. 170 of them received the French Legion Award. They weren't given the same awards in this country. So again, over and over, African Americans love this country. They fight for this country in all aspects. Even when they were so-called unskilled, they were really skilled, because as the Civil War showed, we played important roles in all aspects of fighting for the freedom and what we know as America today. So I want to really, really get us to focus on veterans and the impact on this country. Let's move on to World War II. African Americans weren't allowed freedom in this country, but they were in Europe. Up to 6% of the overseas deployed Army men and women were African American in Europe and North Africa. The Tuskegee Airmen come to mind when you think about them. They flew many, many missions to safeguard European troops in Europe and North Africa. Doing that all the same, when they returned to this country, they weren't awarded freedom. And of the impetus or the ignition for the civil rights movement, I think, was the many soldiers who fought in Europe to free European countries and returned to the United States and realized that they freed a whole continent and their people weren't free in their own country. They were treated badly. They weren't allowed to eat or drink at water fountains. I think it became too much for many Americans, white, black, and of all races, to see that sort of thing going on in this country. So again, Vietnam War, and even up to the war in the Middle East, you have Colin Powell, who was one of the major figures in prosecuting that successful, quote unquote, successful war, I should say, in the Middle East. But the point being that African Americans and people of color have been at the forefront of fighting for this country. And Veterans Day, I don't think veterans on the whole get enough recognition. We kind of, browse past it. I hardly hear anybody mention Veterans Day. And I think we need to raise the level of respect we pay to the people who sacrifice and their family who sacrifice so much for this country. And I just wanted to say, on behalf of myself, my family, and Black Ambassadors of Change, thank you for your contribution to this country, because without you, we wouldn't have the freedom we have. Thank you.